Yu-Gi-Oh has always been a game of robbing your opponent of their precious resources. Every time someone sits in front of you, or logs in front of you, you're trying to rob them of their life points, their time, their dignity, their sanity. Am I forgetting something? Oh, right, their cards. Now, I've already done a guide to removal, and as you guys were kind enough to point out, I missed a bunch of them. So of course, I did what any normal Yu-Gi tuber would do. That's right, I went to the sweatshop, forced Extra Shoddy to make a follow-up for me, waited 8 more months, and now am making a second follow-up. All part of the plan. So now, let's learn, or for most of you, review, more ways to ruin your opponent's life. Tributing as a form of removal is one of the more well-known, not like the other girls' removal methods in the game. Partly because it's been here for so long, and partly because it has entire archetypes dedicated to it. This type of removal comes in a couple of different flavors: tributing at resolution, and tributing because fuck you. Cards like Nibiru, the Big Red Rock, and Public Enemy number 1 of the Madolche's household tribute at resolution, which is a fancy way of saying that you can negate it before it turns your field into a molten hot crater with 10,000 attack. Whereas cards like the Kaijus, Santa Claus, and Lava Golem, on the other hand, tribute because fuck you, which is to say that the moment they decide to summon it, their monster appears, and your monster gets a bullet in the back of its head faster than the last 20 pages of Mice and Men. Now, because this isn't part of an effect, and is more of a summoning condition, this will eat through basically every protection in the game. Targeting protection, destruction protection, blast protection, child protection, unaffected by card effects. However, for obvious reasons, it won't eat through, can't be tributed. Woo! You go, King. There's a few combos that tribute as actual costs, like the kind that start chains. I think some of the Lady of Lament stuff with like Lair of Darkness can do this, but I can say as a Duel Links player that I've never run into this before. I mean, it's not in our game, but that's beside the point. Like I just mentioned, I hope you were listening, Yu-Gi-Oh monsters often come with a variety of different protections. But unfortunately for them, just like the average 6-year-old, none of these will protect them from their own parents. One of the most sick and twisted effects a card will have will be to force a player to take a card that they loved and cared for and throw him in the trash. One of the more well-known users of this torture technique are the Cyber Angels. Izana forces a player to decide on their least favorite spell and trap, while Dakini forces a player to decide on their least favorite monster. Now, these effects force a player to send cards to the grave, but that's not the only place you could be forced to send things. Yep, that's it for me. Pass to you. Battle phase. End of battle phase. Evenly response. You're banishing my field? No. You're banishing your field. Evenly matched, which Extra Shoddy already unwillingly covered, does a similar thing for banishing face down. Evenly works conversely to the Cyber Angels, where it forces a player to pick their most favorite cards, up to the number of cards on the other field, and gets rid of the rest. And given that Evenly is usually the only card on its field when it goes off, you're usually forced to pick one card and carry on. If you want to know more about it, go watch Extra Shoddy complain about it in the Banish Face Down video. Nothing says Sigma Grind Set more than turning your haters into the fuel for your success. And what better way to show that than by summoning using your opponent's monsters? God, what the fuck did I just say? The most well-known version of this is probably Super Poly. I'm sure we've all been Super Poly'd before into, what are they Super Polying into these days? Garunix? Mudragon? Well, in Duel Links, it's Elemental Heroes, because Konami loves gluing this card onto skills owned by this man. Of course, this is not the only card that can fusion summon via communism, as cards like Predaplants pretty much live and breathe, or I guess photosynthesize, the communism fusion lifestyle. Similarly to the other methods here, this one also eats through protection effects, except for, of course, this one. Woo! You go, King. But unfortunately, this won't protect him from the other extra deck summoning removals. Underworld Goddess can link summon with your opponent's monsters, while something like Speedroid Malicious Magnet can synchro with them. I don't think we have anything that can XYZ with your opponent's cards, unless we count things from the anime, but that's okay, because XYZ have their own form of removal as well. As one of you folks so elegantly put it, you can load number 18 Glock and detach materials to activate its effect. Wow, what a great analogy. But how do you put materials back on? Well, all XYZ monsters get materials when being summoned. A smaller portion come with ways to add more materials back on, but only the chosen few have the ability to load up with ammo from your opponent's field. The chosen one that everyone usually thinks of is Silent Honor Arc, which just lets you suck monsters from your opponent's field. And while it does get blocked by many forms of protection, it also has the benefit of avoiding any floating effects, because, plot twist, it's really hard to do anything while you're being crushed by a giant spaceship. Activate your effect! While researching for this video, I found out that you can yoink cards as XYZ materials from a number of places. Everyone's favorite Kashtira card yoinks from the face-down banish pile. Trap Trick's Pingu yoinks when things leave the field. Cards like Zeus yoink material from your wallet. And Goblin's Crazy Beast yoinks from the Spell and Trap Zone, which is kinda crazy. And speaking of yoinking from the Spell and Trap Zone, you can also yoink to the Spell and Trap Zone. This here is probably the funniest removal method that exists. Now, if we're talking old school, we all know what Relinquish does. Steals the monster, gets equipped to it. But what I find the funniest about this removal method is how you visualize them getting equipped to the monster. For example, Relinquished is interpreted as absorbing the monster and assimilating it. Morphotronic Vacuumin is obviously just fucking sucking them up off the floor, outplayed by a literal Roomba. But when you see a sword wielder like Phoenix Gearfried or Buster Blader, you have to imagine that these guys are using dead monsters as weapons. Like, imagine this. You and your dragon friend are fighting this dude, he knocks your dragon friend out, picks him up, and starts swinging him at you. And that is basically the plot of Monster Hunter. Man, I wonder what the overlap of these two games are. Now sure, you can say, oh, Phoenix Gearfried absorbs the power, or Buster Blader's sword absorbs dragon spirits, or Buster Whelp deserved to die. And quite frankly, how could you say something so horrible to my friend here? Close your ears, Buster Whelp. I don't want you getting corrupted again. Up until now, we've been talking about all the creative forms of yoinking, figuring out ways to sneak monsters from our opponent's field to ours. Well, that's enough being creative. If we want them on our field so badly, let's just take them.
Crime.
Theft is one of the removal methods that's been around since the beginning of the game. Originally, we had the gold standard. Where do you want to eat tonight? Sorry, I mean, change of heart. But as time has gone on, new robbery cards have come out that have gotten different restrictions to stop them from being too good. Your opponent gains life points, can't attack or tribute, can't attack or activate its effects, and, oh brother, can only steal a normal summonable monster. Fortunately, just like actual theft, if you don't get caught lacking, this could really give you the leg up that you need on your opponent. This is a joke, please don't go around stealing things in real life. As a Duel Links player, here's one I did not know existed until one of you folks were kind enough to point it out. You can send cards to your opponent's Spell and Trap Zone.
What the hell is even that?
Obviously, there's ways to send your cards to your Spell and Trap Zone, like Vision Heroes and Crystal Beasts, and ways to send your opponent's cards to your Spell and Trap Zone via equipping them like we talked earlier. But cards like Sinful Spoils of Subversion can take your opponent's monsters and put them in their Spell and Trap Zone, which I think is incredibly unhinged. One of the plus sides of this removal method, on top of trying to make cool patterns with their back row, is that similarly to equipping to a monster, it also doesn't trigger any left from field effects, because, you know, it's still there on the field, it's just not doing anything. Thanks, Mr. Valance player, all one of you. Finally, my personal favorite removal method, which a lot of you folks wanted me to talk about. Have you ever wanted to just get rid of your opponent's cards? Are you tired of Konami inventing new ways to bring cards back? From the autoplay mechanic that they invented? Well, this is a skill for you. Mind of the Plana is a Duel Links mechanic that, quote, sends all of your opponent's banished monsters to another dimension. I thought they were already in another dimension. Once per duel, you can activate this skill that just takes all the cards in your opponent's banished pile and just makes them stop existing.
Abracadabra!
You can actually do a version of this skill in the TCG with just a quick trip to your nearest staples. Just don't expect to be invited back to locals after you've done it. The most common way you see this skill being abused is by taking effects that are balanced by only banishing for a short time and making that time be forever. Cards like Malevolent Sin, Farfa, and Destiny Hero Doomlord all banish cards for a certain amount of time. But if you activate this skill, that time becomes infinity. Where is my card, Doomlord? I put it right here, I swear. On the low end, this is just kind of a little irritating. But on the more degenerate end, one of you guys pointed out that you can actually use this skill to hand rip your opponent forever. A lot of cards like the BLS monsters temporarily banish cards from your opponent's hand. Well, if you can rip enough of them, you can make it like your opponent didn't even draw cards in the first place. Now, I think the combo that was mentioned rips half of them to the grave, which isn't as effective these days since hand ripping to the graveyard does still leave a lot of decks playable. So, if you guys, especially you T-Money, ever think of a way to banish all the cards in their hand, you know who to tell. And that's it. Well, that's it until you guys blast me with a million more removal methods in the comments. Well, be my guests. If there's any I missed, especially weird niche crazy ones, throw them in the comments. I love learning about them. And hopefully, if you're a new player, this will teach you a little more about the insane world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like these sort of educational videos, you can look at the other Peasant's Guide series. And if you like learning about the degenerate history of Duel Links, even if you don't play it, you can check out the Duel Links Degenerate series.